Hey, good morning, guys. Just wanted to jump into the respiratory system and dig a little deeper with you guys together. So here we go. When we talk about the respiratory system, it's not very complex in terms of the number of structures you can see here. Basically, it's straightforward, and we're looking here all the way beginning from the nose, going through this pharynx area. Here you can see into the larynx, the trachea, the bronchi, and finally into the lungs where the alveoli are going to be found. So that's pretty straightforward stuff. And we'll refer to that diagram quite a bit. Now, in some of these, as we go through them, guys, I'll just scroll through the slides. You have these slides, so I don't need to read them to you because you know how to read. You know how to use your book with this presentation to really get the depth of it, okay? So use these Cornell notes, the book, and the presentation together, okay? And really, really take your studying to another level. When we look at the functions, guys, we're talking about gas exchange. That's the whole idea. Because when we want to exchange O2 and CO2 from the blood, we use this system to do it. Okay. And that alveolar gas exchange, we're going to get into a little bit more later on. But understand that gas exchange does not happen all the way through those structures we just saw. It's only going to be in the alveoli of the lungs. Okay. The other thing the system is really good at doing is purifying air, humidifying it, or making it moist and warming it. We don't want to bring cold air into the lungs. A warm environment is better for gas exchange, for capillaries to open up and let gases move through and that kind of thing. And vasoconstriction happens when we're too cold. So we want to make sure that that air is nice and warm so we have the ease of diffusion of these gases, and other reasons for these things too. So let's go in a little bit more detail. You can take a look at that nose anatomy on your own. This diagram, I want you to really spend some time looking at, okay? Look at the structures, look at what they point to. This lateral view of things is really interesting, especially when we look at things like the palate that we're going to talk about here in a moment, the tongue, all right, the nasal passages that you see here with the folds, the tonsils that we've been talking about. Okay, this is a really cool view. So, guys, don't rush past this. Really spend some good time studying that. Okay. When we look at this nasal passage that we were just looking at in the other diagram, you'll notice that this slide talks about the olfactory receptors on the superior surface of this mucosa. Okay. If you look here at this nasal mucosa, you can see that it's lined with ciliated cells. Okay, we'll talk more in just a second about that. But I hope you remember that the olfactory nerve is the nerve that sends sensory information about smell into the brain. Okay, so these receptors on the superior surface of this nasal mucosa are receiving that information about smells in your environment, sending that information to the brain. Okay. These purifying and warming and moistening structures are really cool. We look at this respiratory mucosa with the cilia attached. Remember that epithelial tissue that has cilia on the ends of the cells. That mucus is grabbing pathogens, grabbing invaders that we don't want to bring into the respiratory system because the lungs are really delicate. The alveoli are delicate. We don't want to bring in unnecessary particles that will irritate and interfere with this gas exchange. Okay. This is a really cool picture. I wanted to show you just this nasal cavity right here and the oral cavity separated by this structure here called the palate. You see the bone forming the anterior palate and the cartilage back here, I'm sorry, the muscle forming the posterior palate. If you take your tongue and rub it along the palate, you will find right here where the bone changes to muscle, you'll feel almost like a going up of your tongue when you're pressing against it. You can basically tell where that palate changes from the hard palate to the soft palate. Okay. Pretty straightforward, cool stuff. You can read about those sinuses that are named according to those bones. We've talked about those before. So let's move to the pharynx. So here we're looking at the pharynx. This is this muscular passage that extends from the nasal cavity all the way down to the larynx. And it's got three different regions. You can see they're